The Pittsburgh Steelers are playoff bound. Here is everything you need to know about their wild card matchup, what it means for the roster, the moves that they could make, and of course, the quarterback situation. What's going on, everybody? I'm Noah Strackmine. Thank you for jumping on to Steelers to Go, your daily to-go cup of Pittsburgh Steelers news and analysis. Find us on youtube.com/All Steelers Talkers. Subscribe anywhere you get your podcast. The Pittsburgh Steelers are playoff bound thanks to the Jacksonville Jaguars. And yet again, the universe proving you just don't mess with the terrible towel. George Pickens had the final word in a couple of back and forths throughout the season with some Jacksonville Jaguars defensive backs. If you don't know what I'm talking about, go check out allsteelers.com. It is the top story this morning, and it is a good one. It is definitely a good one by GP as the Steelers head to the postseason. We're going to dive into their opponent, the game time, what it means for their roster, and guys like Miles Jack and Eric Rowe, the return of one of their suspended safeties, and of course, the quarterback situation, along with two very key injuries to keep your eye on throughout the week. Let's start, obviously, with their opponent. The Buffalo Bills will host the Steelers in Orchard Park. As of right now, it is expected to be cold and snowy, which everybody is going to freak out about. People are going to say, oh, well, Buffalo knows how to play in the snow. The Steelers, they're coming off as close to a winter game as it gets. Downpouring, freezing cold rain is probably worse than snow in any condition for any event. I don't care what you say. Nobody likes freezing cold rain, especially football players who have to get hit all the time. But the Steelers are built for this. And anybody who's sitting around saying, oh, the snow, that definitely favors Buffalo, you should take a look at the Steelers' identity and how well they have run the football over the last couple of weeks. And to be totally honest with you, if you could remove Josh Allen from the equation, if you can look at the Buffalo Bills and say, you got to run the football, even if it is with your quarterback to beat us, I mean, for one, it certainly helps a defense that may not have TJ Watt, and we'll get to that later. Two, it removes the Buffalo Bills' biggest threat and the guy who leads the league in touchdown passes and somebody who, or touchdowns as a whole, and somebody who could be a game changer at any moment. Snow, I think the Steelers would welcome snow. As for the game time, kickoff is 1 p.m. on Sunday, which again, I think favors the Steelers. I'm not a Saturday night guy. Don't know why. Just don't like it. Don't like the game time. For all you Steelers fans who are not in Pittsburgh, I'm just thankful that you don't have to go out and subscribe to Peacock and pay another $5.99 a month for a subscription service just to watch a football game. Think it's ridiculous. I've thought it's ridiculous. I'm very thankful that the Steelers play at 1 o'clock for those that are not located in either Buffalo or Pittsburgh to get an opportunity to watch this game without stressing. Shout out to the 1 o'clock game. Shout out to Sunday. Obviously, we just talked about the weather, how bad it's going to be. I think it favors the Pittsburgh Steelers. Ground and pound football, baby, all day. That is what the Pittsburgh Steelers are looking for. It should certainly help their case. Let's talk about the roster moves, the injuries, and the return of a suspended safety. We'll start there. DeMonte KZ is eligible to return to the Pittsburgh Steelers after serving his suspension following being ejected in the Indianapolis Colts game for unnecessary roughness, a hit on wide receiver Michael Pittman Jr. He was suspended originally for the entire regular season and the entire postseason. He appealed that suspension. It was upheld but reduced at the same time. Don't really know how that makes sense, but I'm not the NFL. I'm not the NFLPA. Either way, it went from the entire postseason to just the regular season, so KZ can come back. On top of that, the Pittsburgh Steelers, they got good news injury-wise with Minkah Fitzpatrick vowing that he will return from a knee injury in the playoffs. After sitting out against Baltimore, after being labeled questionable, I thought there was an opportunity for him to step on the field. Him not being out there, I think, was more of a precaution, more of a, we have played really well on defense with a guy like Eric Rowe and Patrick Peterson. There's no need to rush you back and risk further injury, especially in a game where the Steelers felt pretty confident going into it. And I know a lot of guys are saying, and Stephen Thompson, my co-host, was saying it too, you don't sit a guy like that no matter what. I think maybe the Steelers had the thought that if he was ready to go, they put him out there. If he wasn't ready to go, they don't put him out there. This week, they're putting him out there. And I would almost guarantee that Minkah Fitzpatrick is on the field with DeMonte KZ, with Patrick Peterson, with Eric Rowe, with Miles Killebrew, with Elijah Riley. Somehow the Steelers' depleted safety room is looking very, very good for this wild card matchup. Two huge names for the Steelers, especially when it comes to the turnovers. Minkah Fitzpatrick is a turnover machine, but he's also a superstar. He's an all-around all-pro. He is just the dude. He's just the dude. DeMonte KZ has 2 interceptions this season, 2 fumble recoveries this season. He's a hard hitter, obviously. He's just a guy that you're going to want on the field, and the Steelers are going to get him back on the field. He'll have a week to accommodate himself or accustom himself back to the defense after missing 3 games. I don't expect that to be too big of an issue. The other injury guy to watch, obviously, is TJ Watt, grade 2 MCL sprain. I would say not looking likely that he plays this week, but it's TJ Watt. And anybody who's sitting around saying, oh, a couple of weeks of rest and recovery, I think TJ Watt is going to do everything he possibly can to be on the field. I'm not going to guarantee that he's on the field. I wouldn't even say it's a 50% shot that he's on the field. But I've seen TJ do crazy things. I have seen TJ return from injuries that nobody anticipated he would return from as soon as he did. I've just seen TJ push through things to be a dominant football player, and I wouldn't be surprised if we see him push through something else here in the wild card round, especially after the season that he had, especially all the times this season that he has said, my only goal is to win a playoff game. I want to win a playoff game for the first time. He's never won a playoff game. I'm just saying. I would say it's slight. It's a very, very small chance that he is on the field. But for anybody who's already ruling this guy out, wait until Wednesday when they step on a practice field and see if he's out there. And from there, we'll take the injury news and we'll run with it. As for a guy like Myles Jack and a guy like Eric Rowe, what the Pittsburgh Steelers need to do with these 2 names is to call them up from the practice squad and sign them to the 53-man roster. I would guess that means a guy like Blake Martinez gets released and then signed back to the practice squad. As for Eric Rowe, I don't know how that goes down. Trenton Thompson, Elijah Riley would likely be the 2 names to watch. Trenton Thompson was a good piece for the defense, but has been dealing with a neck injury with the elevation of Eric Rowe. Maybe that means that he's on his way out. Maybe it's a guy like Darius Rush. Who knows? Who knows who's on the bottom of the Steelers' 53-man roster right now that they could remove to add a guy like Eric Rowe, But him and Myles Jack, they've already been elevated 3 times this season. Therefore, they will need to be signed to the 53-man roster to play in the wild card round. I would expect the Steelers do both of those things because Myles Jack is going to start. And just like Cam Hayward said after the Baltimore game, how the hell did Eric Rowe not make this team? How has he not been on this roster all season? That's the impact both of these guys have had. I would imagine both of them get signed earlier in the week and they replace somebody along with Blake Martinez, but they'll be on the team and they'll be on the roster and they'll be able to play against Buffalo and moving forward with no limitations and no worries about their spot on the 53-man roster. And finally, the big one, the quarterback situation. Everybody wants to bring up, oh, well, you go back to Kenny now. Oh, Mason Rudolph didn't have as crazy of a game in the pouring rain, even though he threw a 70-yard touchdown on a dime to Deontay Johnson over the middle of the field. The Steelers are not going back to Kenny Pickett. Not right now, not this week, not this postseason. This is Mason Rudolph's job. It will remain Mason Rudolph's job for the remainder of the year, however long that is. If the Steelers win a Super Bowl, Mason Rudolph will be their quarterback in that Super Bowl run. It means nothing for next season, not yet at least. Maybe it does if he wins a game against Buffalo or continues to win, who knows. But for right now, it is Mason Rudolph's job. Anybody who's sitting around trying to convince themselves otherwise or say things like, oh, well, his 152 yards and I think it was a 110 passer rating against the Baltimore Ravens wasn't good enough. It was, and it looked good, and I get it that he had mistakes, but everybody had mistakes that game. You're not sitting around benching Najee Harris or Jaylen Warren for their performances. You're not sitting around benching Mason Rudolph for throwing a 70-yard dime. And I get it, it wasn't 70 yards, but it was however long the throw to reception was, plus however long reception to touchdown was. Dime. That won them the game, that gave them the victory, that earned them a playoff spot. The Steelers are riding the hot hand. Mason Rudolph has the confidence of this football team. This football team is riding with Mason Rudolph. And I could just tell you personally, just from being in the locker room, just from being around these guys all season long, the vibe of this team is much different the last 3 weeks. This is a team that is excited about their potential. This is a team that is excited about the offense. This is a team that is excited about being able to utilize their skill sets and their superstardom. And that wasn't there all season long. And I'm not going to say that's Kenny Pickett's fault. I'm not going to say that's Matt Canada's fault or Mike Tomlin's fault or anybody's fault. What I'm saying is right now, the vibe of this team is very high. The energy is very good. The Steelers are just a team that they love what they're doing right now. And Mason Rudolph is their quarterback during this. They don't want that to change. The coaching staff doesn't want that to change. And the fan base shouldn't want that to change. Mason Rudolph is the Steelers quarterback heading into Buffalo in the wild card weekend. That's everything you need to know. If I missed something, drop it in the comments. Tag me on Twitter. Hit me up on Instagram. Whatever. Let me know. I'll be happy to answer questions. But hopefully we ran through everything in what should be a snowy and hopefully successful day in the playoffs for the Pittsburgh Steelers.